Hello, welcome back to another episode of the ArenaCraft Podcast. It is me, it's CGB, one of your co-hosts, and I'm here this week with Arjuna Perkins. Say hello, Arjuna.
Hey, everybody.
And the, of course, famous Arjuna Perkins, who is the founder and my regular co-host of the ArenaCraft Podcast. But we also have a special guest this week, and that is MTGNerdGirl. Say hello.
Hey, guys.
MTGNerdGirl and I are in Vancouver, Washington, making content for CoolStuffInc.com to celebrate the Strixhaven release. So I'm here at your place recording. So it's exciting, it's fun, and now we get to have a special guest on the podcast.
Heck yeah, I'm really glad to be here.
So this week, I am playing the host role. As you guys know, I usually wouldn't. Wait, hold on. I gotta do this. You can find this podcast on my YouTube channel, see Covert Go Blue on YouTube, as well as on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all the other places that you may listen to such a podcast. You can also check us out on the Arena Podcast, ArenaCraftPodcast.com, and on Twitter at ArenaCraftPodcast. How'd I do?
I don't know why it is your ad hoc tradition to just like put the ending of the podcast at the beginning, but you've done it twice in a row now, and I guess it's your signature.
You asked me to host. Sometimes I just host completely backwards.
I mean, it makes sense.
Accept.
People usually watch the beginning and then viewers slowly fall off on things, right? So getting the plugs there in the beginning is pretty next level. Pro play.
I like next level more than complete screw up, so I'll take it. But yeah, excited to kind of be the host in this one because this is going to be an episode about Limited. We're going to talk Strixhaven Limited and some of the fundamentals of why you guys should get into Limited and at least do some amount of drafting. And with MTGNerdGirl, limited content specialist, and Arjuna, limited mega fan for quite some time. You've done a few limited editions of the podcast that people can check out. So you play quite a bit of limited. Quite a bit of limited. I play a very, very little amount. So I'm just going to be the eye candy or ear candy for a little bit here and then let you guys take it away. So, as usual, though, we'd like to start the show with a question from you, the amazing listeners. So, what is our lightning round question this week, Arjuna?
All right. So, Gabe, the guru, comes in our... by the way, we have a Discord channel for the ArenaCraft Podcast. You can find a link to that in the show notes or in the video description down below. So, go check that out if you too want to ask a question or just participate in the community. So, Gabe, the guru, asks, what is your guys' opinion on blocks, and do you like that they're coming back with Innistrad? So I thought that this would be a good question to choose for the drafting week because blocks have such a big effect on draft formats. So Nerd Girl, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think about block draft, and of course any other block thoughts in general?
I like block well enough. I think I'm probably going to be of the limited players, probably more in the minority here. I actually have just been happy without them. And I think the reason for that is when you start to go through a block, you repeat a lot of the same mechanics. Oftentimes in like the second or the third part of a block, they'll introduce new ones, but they're so diluted because they're split across 3 packs, 3 different ones. So you're not getting like a ton of the new mechanic, and you don't get to draft that third set in the block on its own. So you really don't get to enjoy anything that's new, but then you also have the same repeated mechanics over 9 to 12 months over and over again, which to me feels a lot less fun. Whereas in this particular way, they have it set up where each set, Eldraine into mutate into life gain, you're jumping from mechanic to mechanic much faster in like the grand scheme of things. And I enjoy that.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, actually. I noticed that when I was drafting, the sets that I consistently looked back on that I enjoyed the most, or rather the draft formats I enjoyed the most, were just like triple big set. And I found myself kind of like every time there would be, a new block set introduced, I'd noticed that my interest in the format waned a little bit. And I think it's basically for the reasons that you said. I really enjoy synergy in draft. It's one of the reasons that I like to play draft, actually, is because it kind of forces you on the spot to discover the synergies in the set with the cards that you've got and kind of make them work. And I just found that like it was always kind of a bummer to have that diluted, right, with these new mechanics. And now you have like 2 different sets worth of stuff to try to synergize. And as much as I feel like WotC tried to design them with that in mind, I always just felt like there was a bit of a schism there. So yeah, I'm a big fan of triple big set. I think it's cool that they're trying it with these Innistrad sets because it's just something different, and I'm always down for difference. So I'm also curious to see how they're going to implement that on Arena. Do you have any thoughts on that, CGB?
Yeah, I'm going to take that middle of the road answer that people like so much. I think it depends on the set. So if we had an Eldraine block, that would be miserable. You know, I want nothing to do with 2 sets of Eldraine. One was brutal enough, but I would have loved 2 sets of Kaldheim because Snow didn't get there for constructed.
Yeah, so you're looking at that from a constructed standpoint, whereas I think we were thinking of it strictly from a limited perspective, right? I mean, I might be wrong. Maybe you were also thinking about constructed.
Well, it's the limited episode of the podcast, and I'm still in my constructed brain mode.
So without it being like considering it for constructed, I actually liked the Eldraine flavor for draft a ton. I think that might have been kind of a cool one to be self-contained and expand on those story themed archetypes. But yeah, you're right. That'd probably be absolutely miserable for constructed because the entire set should probably just be banned. But it wasn't that bad. Oko in limited is not bad. It's no Dream Trawler.
Interesting.
I have definitely had the distinct privilege in limited of beating turn 1 Goose into turn 2 Oko into, what was it, turn 4 Wicked Wolf.
It's really not that bad.
So yeah, after I beat that opening, I felt like I could retire from Eldraine Limited on my laurels there.
Yeah, I think you beat the game with that one. But like you said, not that bad. Yeah, just from a constructed standpoint, I totally accept what you guys are saying on limited. It makes sense. I would also probably enjoy a variety, of experiences, mechanics, synergies. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope that they keep experimenting. Like I feel like every time they make a change, I'm always like, yeah, cool. Let's try that out. So it doesn't get too stagnant. Well, thanks so much for that question, Gabe the Guru. And yep, like I said before, you too can ask a question on the podcast by joining the Discord. All right, back over to you, CGB.
Yeah, it's great. Here it is in my hands, the limited episode with 2 limited experts on the show to talk about the format. And we want to start out with saying to you, yes, you out there listening, if you don't draft often, we want to give you kind of the good reasons to do it from kind of an economy perspective. You said something as we were getting ready to do the show, Arjuna, about how basically you found out that you could draft and get a good amount of the rares that you want to play constructed for free. I wanted you guys to expand on that and talk about the benefits of playing limited for your Arena account, for the economy side of the Arena account.
So I'll just jump in on that a little bit and then I'll hand it over to NerdGirl. Yeah, so, okay, here's roughly how my experience of Arena went. And I feel like a lot of players can probably relate to this. So you fire up Arena, you realize that the cards that you're given at the beginning are kind of paltry, I guess is a good way of putting it. Then you big brain it up and you enter some codes and maybe you buy the introductory packet. And after all of that, you end up with like a third to maybe half of the cards to build like some reasonable budget deck, like some deck you could actually play and not get laughed out of the room with, right? So I feel like they give you just enough right at the beginning that you don't have like the completely most awful deck ever. And then you kind of grind it out and you get your gold and it's just really slow going. And I feel like at no point as a new Arena player did I ever have a feeling of like, I'm really in it now, man. I can play the decks in standard I want to play. I can try this, I can try that. And it was really rather frustrating. And I didn't really start to feel like a sense of freedom on Arena and a sense of like like you're watching these streamers and you're like, oh, cool, they play a different deck every day. Look at CGB, he's playing the snow deck one day and he's playing the 10 planeswalker deck the next day. And how the heck can I ever do that? Like as a random pleb just playing the game. And the answer that I found is drafting. Now it's definitely predicated on, doing some amount of well when you draft. And hopefully by the end of this episode, we'll kind of help to get you there a little bit. But this was really the way that I achieved like financial liberation, as it were, on Arena. So I put in, I bought like 20K worth of gems probably over a year ago now. And I have managed to essentially go infinite with those with a little subsidy from the content creator program, which I'm thankful for. But basically, I've managed to just not spend money on Arena for the last over a year, right? Which I think that should be compelling, right? If you're someone who's like, wow, I spend hundreds of dollars every set, or maybe I buy the welcome package every set, the pre-release package, and I just never quite feel like I'm getting there, right? Hopefully that should feel like, oh wow, okay, that's interesting. Like, how do I do that? And here's the thing, like I'm good at limited, I'm no stranger to getting trophies and stuff, but like I'm not like Apex Predator, Chad, Mythic Destroyer limited player like NerdGirl, right? So, and I still, managed to do just fine. So anyway, that's kind of my preamble on it. NerdGirl, I'd be interested to hear like your thoughts on the initial outlay of it.
Yeah, I want to hear from the Apex Predator.
I am not an Apex Predator at all. Like I'm decent at limited, but the way you described your gameplay, it's honestly, I would put money on you being a better limited player than me. I do okay. I have a lot of recommendations. It's really interesting that you actually wanted to touch on this topic because I have done a lot of the math and research on figuring out what is the best way to maximize the value on your accounts. And limited is one of the things I always recommend to my viewers, but a lot of times, I'll just throw this out there first, right out of the gate, because this is basically anytime I talk about this, all my comments, a lot of them say, well, I don't like limited, so dedicating the time to do what you are suggesting by doing a bunch of drafts to fill your collection is not worth, the $50 to $100 per set for a lot of people. So, we know that. So, we're not trying to bully you into drafting or tell you that, this value is so insane that you should be miserable for half the set. But it's just definitely an option for you guys should you be interested in it. So sorry, I wanted to, just give that little.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Little thing, because that's a lot of people, they get angry with me about it. So yeah, I also draft. I get a full collection on my main account and my free-to-play account by drafting. So again, not a ton. I do recommend a free-to-play account. So that way, if you enjoy limited for the sake of limited, you can play more. Also, if you want to build your collection through limited, a second free-to-play account gives you more daily rewards to practice limited, to where then you can go and make higher rewards and prize payouts in your main to make getting a collection even cheaper. So if you're one of the people that say, I can't really do it through draft because I'm not good enough, that's a really good way to get some free experience.
And I'm going to have you have you kind of dangle a carrot for the viewers. How many packs would you say you have on that account? You showed me this.
So yeah, my free-to-play account, I don't open my packs because I don't need them as a limited player. So I open them like every Friday. I'll open some from one of the accounts. I'll open like 50 every Friday, but I think my free-to-play account is sitting on like something 200 plus ish unopened packs for no reason at all. And most of those I have a complete collection on the free to play for it. So I don't even need them.
Yeah. So I love the way that Arjuna phrased like arena financial freedom. I feel like that could be its own like video or tag, but it's real. You have done that on a free to play account. You have all those packs and you don't even need to open them, which is amazing.
Yeah, and then, I see people like Saffron Olive, and I'm sure you as well, CGB, maybe you disclose the numbers, but maybe you don't, right? But a lot of content creators are saying they sink $300+ per set. And of course, it's important for, constructed masterminds to be getting their hands on the cards immediately, so you don't necessarily have the luxury of having the time to draft the whole set. But I think that's kind of on the other end of the spectrum, right? Like where if you just want to have all of the cards out of the gate, you're looking to invest certainly hundreds of dollars, right?
Yeah, I would say it would be weird on a set release if I probably didn't spend $200 to get most of the cards for the first week to start recording with them. But it has definitely helped a little that, and this is what I say to anybody out there who says, I really don't like drafting. That's been me for years. But I found somebody who really likes drafting, and we've been making content together, and that's what's gotten me into drafting. MTGNerdGirl has, like, on Thursday nights, we do a draft together, and we just kind of co-pilot and talk through it. I find that really fun in a way that I never found drafting fun before. So if you're out there and you can, like, jump on a Discord or a Zoom call with somebody who loves drafting, it can really help. And because of that, I'm getting a lot more gems. Yeah.
So see, I noticed I went on CGB's stream one time and I was like, why do you have unused tokens? He's like, I don't know. I get them every set release with the pre-orders.
Yeah, tokens for sealeds and draft entries that I never use.
5 sealeds and 15 drafts or something. And I was like, what are you? Wow. I was like, okay, every Thursday, come onto my stream and we're going to use these. And our win rate's like 80% or something together.
Yeah.
So, we get, between 1,600-ish gems per one of those, and he would have just drafted them and then conceded.
Yeah. I used to use those draft tokens to tilt Arjuna by coming on the show and letting him know about my hot draft strategy, which is you always pick the top left and then you resign.
It's so painful. It's so painful.
But she fixed me. Now I draft like a civilized magician.
Well, if I wasn't there, you'd probably still go back to your savage ways.
Probably. Honestly though, I would probably call up like a buddy that I have at home. He goes by Cool Jets online. His name's Josiah. He loves to draft. I would probably draft with him now because I didn't know how fun this could be. I call up Arjuna. My buddy Arjuna would draft with me.
Cool Jets is sick, man. I didn't know that you know him.
Oh, yeah. We're friends from like way back. We started playing together like as baby magicians.
Aww.
Heck yeah. Dude, yeah, shout out for Cool Jets. Go check out his stream. He also streams Star Realms, which is like one of my favorite non-Magic card games. So, and just like probably some of the best music you'll hear on a stream too. So definitely check him out. Awesome. Okay, so we've gone a little bit into that. I just wanted to talk, like we'll get to the drafting and how to draft portion in a moment, but I just wanted to give you an example of what you can expect from a draft. So let's say, for example, that you have 10K gold and you spend it on a draft, right? I think that the average person thinks, well, I could open 10 packs, right? And that would give me 10 either rares, mythics, or wild cards, plus my little wild card wheel filling up as well. So, on average, you get, it's what, like 1 2/3 of a rare wild card from opening 10 packs. So the argument is, if I'm getting like 11-ish rares for each entry, why would I like enter a draft where, we only open like 3 packs each? And, I'm not guaranteed to be getting my 11 rares and et cetera, et cetera. And what I wanted to point out is that, first of all, if you are focused on rare drafting, then you actually get 24 shots at getting a rare in a draft, right? There's 24 packs opened. Each one of those has a rare. In Strixhaven, each one of them actually might have 2 rares. So that's an additional reason to draft this set specifically. So if you are just focused on getting your money's worth and making sure that you're filling your collection, you can rare draft. It's not guaranteed, but people do often just wheel around random mythics and stuff because that just don't fit well in their deck, right? So you can easily, there have been times when I've rare drafted and I've easily just met my entry fee just by rare drafting, right? I picked up 2 mythics 8 rares, etc. And it was just like well worth my money. But then in addition to that stuff that you're getting from the actual draft, you also then have a shot to earn extra packs and extra gems. And so when you add all of that value together, like even if you're a 50-50 player and you go 3-3, that's what, 1,000 gems? Am I right about that in best of one?
Yeah, so I've actually done the math on it. I wish I would have known we were going to go so in depth, because I have a spreadsheet with all of those numbers that I could potentially pull up for you. But on Quick Draft, if you go 0 wins, you're getting a 50 gem discount per pack. If you're buying gems, which you could say that 1,000 gold is equal to 200 gems for the pack thing there. Now, if you're going 50-50, which you are suggesting, you are getting 50% off your gems in Premier Draft, 50% off your packs. So then, even though you're missing some of those wheel pips, and that includes the prizes, the packs and the prize support, right? And then after you subtract your gems that you won. So Quick Draft, great for new players. You don't have a timer. Even if you go 0 wins, you're getting a 50 gem discount per pack, which is, sizable. So then you can, after doing a few of those, you could just purchase a few extra packs. That kind of mitigates it. But if you get lucky and you spike 3 to 4 wins, if you're, like I said, not the most experienced limited player, then you're just increasing that average on how much you're getting a discount per pack. You mentioned the wheel pip. When you open packs, you get a little bit more rares that way. It's also important to note that the packs you open in draft or sealed, you're getting 15 cards instead of the 8. So you fill up your common and uncommon collection much more. Also, that extra common and uncommons that you're getting from the drafting, you fill up your vault value, which will also give you rares to, again, try to mitigate some of that extra value as well.
That's awesome. I love that, because I just want people to understand how much you actually do stand to gain by doing it, right? Even if you're a cynical economist like CGB, there are still reasons to kind of get in and give it a try. And here's another thing too, is that if you're not one of these people who drafts all the time, then you might just be like at the very bottom of bronze every single season. And I've found like one of the easiest ways to just pick up some packs is to just draft in bronze, because I mean, let's face it, like people in bronze are just, they're not the apex Chad drafters, right? So sometimes you get some pretty soft competition down there, and there's nothing wrong with just drafting up through bronze, silver, and just stopping when you feel like, oh wow, I've kind of met my threshold, and then just going back to constructed. So it can really be that simple, right? You draft for a week. You kind of get up to where you're feeling like, okay, this isn't easy anymore. I'm not having fun anymore. And then you just move on.
I'm going to butt in quickly to say I'm going to add cynical economist to my Twitter bio. I think that's perfect. And second, really proud of that 80% win rate in bronze. It does pay off quite a bit.
We've got to silver a few times. So to touch on lightly what you were saying about how, stay in the lower ranks, draft for a week or two, and then wait until the format resets. That's a really great way to keep your win rate high if you're trying to build a collection over the life of a set. But another thing is actually Quick Draft, as opposed to Premier Draft, has a much better pack discount rate for the first 0 to 3 wins. Once you go higher than 3, then you're getting a better discount rate in the Premier Draft. But if you feel like you are a more inexperienced player, stay in the Quick Draft. So you get a better discount. Plus, there's no timer on the cards. So you can screenshot it, share it with your friends, ask what the pick is. You can leave. You could do some research. You could look up set review articles for limited and, make each pick accordingly. Also, that's typically where the free-to-play players are, which, they don't get as much practice drafting, and they draft far less because they're free-to-play players. So it's easier to get wins there as well. And it's rotating sets. So if you jump into an older set, like we just did Eldraine a week ago, and a lot of players who are just coming to Arena haven't had any experience with that set. So if you have, you can jump back in, and most of the people playing it are not the regular ladder grinders. So you'll be playing against much weaker players in general.
I'm also going to poke you and make you plug where they can find your set reviews and ratings.
So you guys can find my set reviews on YouTube and on Cool Stuff Inc., one of our mutual sponsors. And they're also on the untapped.gg overlays. So
Heck
if you guys check those out, it like actually pops up the ratings on your Arena client, and it'll show you a rating 1 to 5, and then it will, if you hover over the card, it will show you, 2 to 3 sentences about how I feel the card will perform for you. But there's a lot of other creators that do limited set reviews too, including LSV. You guys could find. There's a ton.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Yep. And another resource, which has become a little controversial lately because of how heavily some people rely on it, is 17 Lands. That is another tracker / software that you can install on your computer, which will give you just probably more information than you ever wanted to know about your own draft. And just, you can consult that site. They have like statistics on everything. It's kind of insane, really. So, if you're ever like, you could easily just go to 17 Lands, pull up Strixhaven, and just kind of skim through like the most popular commons and uncommons. And then right there, you're ahead of the game, like boom, pack one, pick one. You're like, oh, that uncommon is one of the best uncommons in the set. Really high win rate. Just slam it and go into those colors and let's go. So yeah, a lot of resources to help you out. Okay, so NerdGirl, I wanted to pivot into talking about just like some limited basics so that when people actually get into draft, they're not just like immediately getting rolled. Because I know that like the first time I sat down to do a draft ever, I was coming back to the game. And it was just like, I didn't want to buy into a deck. And so I just went to a draft. And I had that experience, which I think a lot of people have, which is like, pack one, pick one. And it's, you feel like you're reading clay tablets or something. And you're just like, oh my God, like what the hell am I doing? I have no idea. And it's just like, it's so much information and there's like a timer and it's really stressful. So I wonder if you could take us through just like some of the foundational concepts of limited to help people who are starting out.
Some prep to begin with is always really helpful. So if you take a look at one of the set reviews we were talking about before and read the ratings on all of the cards, I know a lot of people don't have that much time to dedicate. Mm-hmm. But, sorry, I was waiting for the dog to stop barking.
And the dog barks again.
Oh no. If you have an opportunity to get that sort of preparation, it'll definitely help you draft a much higher quality deck. If you can get some practice on Arena, like you were saying, there's a timer and, you are feeling like you have to read all these cards, which takes way more time if you don't have any experience with the set. So doing those quick drafts gives you all the time in the world to consult friends, Discords, or just like really take a chance to look at the layout of your deck that you don't have the opportunity to do in paper, and then assess the situation accordingly and draft that way. I think it will really improve your overall draft quality. To go towards what you were saying, I've been playing Magic for 21 years, and I took a very, very long break from casual gameplay. I was a full-time poker player for many years. Came back to the game around M12 and drafted a deck. And this was one of my first times in many years playing with not just like a homebrew of cards I happen to own. So, very not casual. And I found that deck a year or two later after I started playing competitive and like cashing GPs. And I was sorting through some cards and I'm like, what the heck is this bulk of cards? And my friend was like, that was your first draft. And I was like, wow, this is really awful. Like, how did I even like keep playing Magic? It was so bad, but it definitely can be avoided if you have a little bit of knowledge. I know a lot of content creators have, just Google Sheets with information on a lot of the cards. Mm-hmm.
Friend of the cast, Deathsea, and another somebody else who's Cool Stuff being sponsored now does a tier list spreadsheet that's free to everybody as far as the time that we're recording this, as far as I know.
My Discord, I have a Discord channel that's only dedicated to pictures of 7-win decks. So you can scroll to a specific set and then you can check out which decks for me personally were performing very well. So that might give you an idea which cards to keep an eye out for. Yeah.
I think that also it sounds kind of it should be obvious to us, but we always forget to say it. Streamers, you can log on to Twitch TV and usually find somebody streaming draft and talking about what they're picking and why, playing something on Arena that you will probably be able to pick up and play as well. And that just really helps a lot to feeling like you're not alone. All these resources kind of help you not feel like you're going in completely empty-handed.
Yeah, another thing I always recommend too, like if you don't have enough time to watch a streamer do the whole shebang, one of the things that's really cool is I know there's a lot of streamers, myself included, that post drafts online. Now, let's say you're an experienced constructed player, you don't really need to be told how to play your cards, but watching the first 15 minutes of the draft video and going through the drafting process with the streamer as they talk out loud and give you all of their decision trees is really helpful. You do that a couple of times for the start of a set, and that's a lot of free hands-on experience that you don't have to pay for. Like, you don't pay for that draft to suck at it and learn from. You can just learn from them.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I actually like the constructed parallel, because when you're drafting, ideally what you're doing is you're making a constructed deck on the fly with a very limited collection of cards, right? So I think that sometimes people get a little bit intimidated by the thought of building a draft deck, because it's like, what do I pick when and where, and when do I commit, and all of that kind of stuff. And I mean, that's part of the fun of draft. If it were really easy all the time, it wouldn't be as fun. So there's always going to be some amount of that. But I think that one of the things that you should be aiming to do is to model the decks that you're building after constructed decks. So here's an example. Like, let's say that the draft is going along and like you pick up a sweet rare, right? What's the 2/2 for 2 that's seeing play even in constructed, the white creature that pumps the team with Magecraft?
Leonin Light Scribe, right?
Light Scribe, right? Leonin Light Scribe.
Yeah, okay. That's it.
Thanks, CGB. I'm terrible with the names for this set.
I know the art and I know what they do. Right? Never know names.
Exactly. So this is a great example. So pack one, pick one, you see that, and you're like, that's my rare. It's a pretty sweet card. You pick it, all right? So boom, already you can be thinking, okay, well, I ran into this in, on the ladder. And what were they playing? Well, they were playing a bunch of 2-drop creatures. So I'm going to try to pick up as many white 2-drops as I can. I saw this Boros version. Cool. Like and I guess it's a Lorehold, right? So Lorehold is a supported color set in this current set, right? Or you can also do the Orzhov one. How do I?
Silverquill.
Silverquill. Okay, right. So already it's kind of pushing you in the direction, right? So I'm kind of prioritizing taking cheap creatures. I need a lot of creatures. I also need combat tricks, because that's what trips it up and gets the whole thing going. And that 1-mana learn combat trick is really good in constructed, and guess what? It's really good in that deck in limited, right? So it doesn't have to be as difficult as it seems if you just try to kind of follow the proven formulas, right? Cheap removal, good and constructed, good and limited. Aggressively statted creatures, good in both formats. You notice the mono red deck only runs like 4 creatures that or even 3 creatures that cost 4 because they're Tor brands, because they're kind of like your bomb, but the rest of the deck is cheap, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So that can really help you guide your picks in the draft. So yeah, CGB, I was curious to ask you about, your experience as primarily a constructed player, how that has translated in picking up more drafts. Like, do you find yourself following a process like that when you're drafting?
If I can, it's more comfortable. I can tell it's a lot more comfortable when I can look to grab Behold the Multiverse and Doomscar and try to play a control deck, because it feels like very familiar to me. But I also found that you have to be a lot more flexible, I think, to get the ideal draft deck, because it's going to be a long ways away from the standard comfort zone. So if you're like me and you play a lot of the rare cards and you craft a lot of the rare cards and you're used to playing that power level, you have to adjust your mind a little bit to what's just better in draft when you can't lean on those crutch cards and those crutch play patterns that you're used to. So it really helps to have somebody kind of walking me through it and poking me when I'm trying to play blue-white control and I need actual win cons in my deck, like NerdGirl does.
Well, creatures. I think that's always a funny transition when you're a control player building a control deck in limited and you still need to have like 8 creatures in your deck, right?
Oh yeah, there was a card, this is going to really date me, but I always, there was this gargoyle and back in Alliances that I always wanted to draft because whenever it died, it went on top of your library, like a 2/2 flyer for 5. And I would just always draft that and just only removal and card draw and just beat them with that one card. It doesn't really work that way anymore.
Yep. No, indeed. But anyway, yeah, we're going to move on to Strixhaven proper in just a moment here. But I just wanted to remind people a great way to approach limited is the CABS theory. And I learned this first on Limited Resources, which is, probably the longest running and most successful Magic Limited podcast, just Magic podcast in general out there. So a great resource for limited. But it's just cards that affect the board strategy, and the rough outline of that is bombs. So we all know what a bomb is. That's like Goldspan Dragon, right? Or in this set, Professor Onyx, immediate bomb, just, pack one, pick one, windmill slam them, and then try to be in that color. And then the second one is, depending on the set, but you can't go wrong with either, is really good removal and really solid creatures. And again, creatures that see play in standard are a great place to start. There are a lot of common and uncommon ones that pretty much always going to be good in draft with rare exception. And then also just well-statted creatures, 3/3s for 3, 4/4s for 4, stuff like that. And then, so that's the core of your deck, really, is any bombs you could pick up, solid creatures, solid removal, and then just a sprinkling of other interaction and other things. And that's just a really solid way to approach like level 1 drafting. I think when you get more used to drafting, you can start branching out and making fancier decks that maybe play more spells and less creatures and stuff like that. But like, if you're really uncomfortable with drafting, that's just... It's never going to steer you too wrong to have a deck full of just solid creatures, some top end, and a couple of really good interactive spells. Yeah. Cool. Any last thoughts, NerdGirl, before we dive into Strixhaven?
No, not too much. Just to, I guess, quickly touch on what you were saying about like, if you are uncomfortable with drafting, a couple of little quick tips is don't be afraid of 1 or 2 expensive cards. A lot of constructed players might think, a 6-drop, that we can't play this. A lot of decks can't support things like that in constructed, but in limited, 1 or 2 of them won't kill you. You want a nice curve to your deck. Try not to play things that are too low impactful. I typically don't consider 1 drops to be part of my curve, and I'm pretty happy for my curve to start on 2. So, and you want, a nice little bell curve. That's it.
Yep. Solid credence to don't play 1-drops in limited unless you know they're really good.
Yeah.
Like the what was it? The Battle Hawk or whatever from the last set. Kaldheim was really good.
Battlefield Raptor?
There you go. Yeah. So that was an example of a highly playable 1-drop, but usually they tend to not be in limited. So I really like that tip a lot. Okay, cool. So let's transition over into Strixhaven. And I think that, so one of the nice things about playing Strixhaven is that the last time we saw a set that was like this was the Ravnica blocks, where it was just really localized to these 2 color pairs. And one of the nice things about that is it's almost puts your draft on rails, where like usually you figure out pretty quick which is the 2 color pair that's open in your seat, hopefully, unless the draft is really going weird. And then usually you just try to pick the best cards in that pair. So it's actually a great reason to come into playing limited in this set because you have nice dual lands. You have a lot of dual colored cards. You have cards that have the, split mana symbols. And So I, highly recommend jumping into the draft and just looking out for which college is the most open. And usually if you just kind of pick a sampling of the cards from the set, a nice variety, it should end up building you kind of a pre-assembled draft deck that works pretty well. The themes work with each other. So that's a really great place to start. But I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts so far, Nerd Girl, and CGB, of course, on like what's really good? What's kind of like the ground zero in this set so far?
So I've only played a little bit. CGB came like a day or two after the set released. We didn't get the streamer event, so I didn't get a ton of hands-on experience there. We did 3 paper seals on our stream for our co-op since he's been here. And those were really fun, but like, I don't feel like I have a really good ground for like what is good and what isn't. I mean, there's definitely a couple of cards that are over or underperformed for me, I'm sure, based on like what my initial set reviews were. But all of the schools feel pretty good. I think Witherbloom maybe is a little bit more synergistic. Just to touch slightly on what you were saying about how your deck is kind of on rails. The one thing I will say to that is if you are considering starting to pick up draft in this format, is make sure you know what your color pairs are. Because the set is actually very reasonable to have 3 color decks. There's 2 different land cycles with so common and rare lands that are duals. So it lets you jump into a sister school very easily. There's a land that produces mana of any color, and there are treasure tokens in this format. So let's say you decide that you're Witherbloom. You want to know what your sister school is for black and for green, because that makes it possibly easier for you to splash, so you can pick up those dual lands later in that common slot. So you definitely want to have a little bit more information going into this. You are right that, it's kind of on rails, so the cards that are good for you is very easy to see, but it is kind of a more advanced format when it comes to actually the power and synergy of the cards themselves.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I found that a lot of the pools, even though we were doing it with the pre-release packs, which does try to put you on rails because you get this booster that's just these cards from this college that
pre-seeded pack.
Yeah, and we still very often you went completely out into other colors at one point to a lot of success. Like you did really well in that battle, and I splashed Teamer a lot. Like when I played Quandrix because there were just some red cards that needed it. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I would say from my experience of playing the set so far, I've personally found the Teamer schools to be colleges to be kind of the most flexible and perhaps the most powerful in my experience. So that's, of course, Quandrix and Prismari, blue-green, blue-red. They synergize very, very nicely with each other because so on the Quandrix side, you have a lot of ramp. This is it's one of the most rampy formats actually I've seen in Limited in a long time, where so many of the cards at common and uncommon in Quandrix really are putting more lands onto the battlefield. And then they're giving you these 7 and 8 mana sorceries and a few massive creatures to slam down. So I found that, oftentimes you get a little bit of ramp from the Quandrix and then you get some top end from Prismari. That can be a really nice way to just lock up a game. So they, excuse me. So they tend to play really nicely together. I have found that in the Mardu pairings, it's not that I don't think those decks can be good, but the ones that I've seen succeed and really pull ahead and feel like, whoa, like that deck was really good, tend to feature a little bit more rares, or maybe people picked up some more synergistic uncommons to pull them together. But having said that, I do think that any color pair /3 color pairing does seem very doable. I will say that this is definitely not, despite the fact that there's really good fixing in the set, this is not one of those all over the place, totally off the rails sets like Kaldheim was. So if you're coming from Kaldheim, that was just a rainbow explosion of a set. And this is definitely not. I think that, really what the two of you are saying is correct. You want to be playing 2 to 3 colors in this format, pretty much exclusively, I would say, unless you're a real wizard and you know what you're doing. Another thing that really helps with splashing is playing environmental sciences. This is a really, really important card in this set. So this is a lesson out of the sideboard. And this is just a card that is colorless, and it helps you basically with any splashing that you would want to do. So this is, a lot of content creators have been saying this, and I found it to be true that that's a very, very important lesson to pick up in the draft if you can. I'd like to hear, so NerdGirl, I've been finding that the lesson and the learn mechanic are really, really crucial to this format. Would you say that that's the case in your experience?
Yeah, I actually thought they would be pretty powerful, and I'm finding that when I've got good lesson and learns, it's more powerful than I thought. I feel like I'm just running away with the game. The way I like to explain it, similar to, what was the first set with modal cards where it was a land on the backside?
That was Battle for Zendikar?
Battle for Zendikar, yeah. So the spell side of it might be weak.
Hold on, they're going to leave comments. Zendikar Rising.
Zendikar Rising.
Yep.
So there's already 10 comments.
Yeah. Yep. Hi, guys. Got it. Thank you.
So the backside is not necessarily strong enough to justify playing it in your deck. It's pretty bad for the mana cost. It's not something you would typically run, but it's kind of free because if you draw it late in the game, it's way better than a forest, right? So you're getting a ton of added value to your deck without having any additional cost, even though that card doesn't justify its own cardboard cost. But the lesson feels very, very similar. A lot of the learn spells are worth their own weight in gold. So then you're just getting this really nice added bonus. And it's not that you just have the one, it's that you have 4 or 5 that all fill a different need and allow you to be very choosy on which you take when, which again adds extra value to that card. Because you're not top decking a 7-drop lesson when you don't need it or you need a land or whatever. You're just taking the fixing, the filler, the removal, then you can get your bomb later. So you're not only drawing extra value where you shouldn't have, you're also drawing them when you need them, which is great.
Totally. And one of the things that I've noticed as well is that I think it's really important to have at least one creature lesson in your back pocket if you can try to pick one of those up.
The creature lessons are amazing.
Right? Yeah, talk to us a little bit about that.
I feel like $1 million every time I get the 4/4 is it one. Now I will but most of them are dual color, and I'll play them in either school. You don't need to be in that specific school, so I will play.
But I believe it's called Elemental Summoning.
Yeah, summoning something. Yeah, that sounds right. So I will play that if I'm just in the blue or if I'm just in the red. It doesn't really matter. And I'm happy to have 2 to 3 creature lessons in every single deck.
Mm-hmm.
From a synergy. Sorry.
I'll just say this and I'll pass it over to you, CGB. I find that people should just be picking those higher. I think people are maybe picking them at the level of C+, really good playable. And I pick them at good uncommon category of prioritization. Because just the first one is so strong, right? It's just, you can get it almost every game. It's almost like having a companion. Anyway, okay, over to you, CGB.
I was just going to also add just the way that the lesson spells just happen to be spells. They allow cards to play with your other synergies that might not otherwise. So if you have a creature that learns, it goes and gets a spell, and a spell triggers Magecraft, and Magecraft is all over the place. So I was always really happy when I fetched the fractal summoning one, that the one that is in Simic and makes an XX fractal for how much you put into it. A lot of times I was triggering Magecraft with it, and I was getting another body, a huge body, so that was a payoff. In Witherbloom, there are multiple lessons that gain life, and there's a lot of payoffs for life gain. So there's also sweet synergies weaved into the lessons as well.
Yeah, it's really cool how you can have these turns where you cast a learn card into a lesson card, and they seem to have thought about the curve, right? So you have a lot of 2 mana lessons into 3 mana 2 mana learn spells into 3 mana lessons, and that's just kind of a nice little thing that you can do on turn 5 is often a good turn to do that. Or like do one of them early in the game so that you can get like a turn 5 elemental down. And yeah, some of those creatures are thick, you know, like I've had decks where the largest creatures in my decks were those like the Prismari and the Quandrix lessons. So yeah, those are really good. Let's talk about some of the best lesson cards that people should be looking out for. And again, I apologize, I'm just not going to get the names for a lot of these. But some of my favorite ones so Quandrix and Prismari have access to this blue instant 1 and a blue. Target creature gets -4/-0, and then you learn. And that's just like, people will have played that as a combat trick anyway in a lot of formats. You know, sometimes they'll give you like a little bonus, like you'll get a clue out of it, or you'll get a scry or something like that. And this one is like every bit as good as any of those have been. So that's a really good one. I also really like the one that's it's a 3-drop instant. It gives your creature +3/+1 and trample and learn.
That one's very good. The best one is the red igniting. It's just a sorcery speed 3 damage learn. That thing is nuts.
Oh, I've not been fortunate enough to pick one of those up.
So good.
Yeah, what are some of the ones you've been enjoying, NerdGirl?
I mean, definitely that removal spell and the trample one you were talking about is like 2 of my favorite because they pull their own weight, and then you get that added value, which you kind of in need for some of the lessons, because they oftentimes give your opponent a card back or whatever. So you can't really just throw away a learn spell that gives you no value. Otherwise, it doesn't justify the lesson. But I do think those 2 are... The red one's a gimme. That one's so insane. But there is also, I'm trying to think. Like I said, I haven't played all that much of it. Isn't there a ramp spell that also learns that gets only a forest? That thing is pretty darn good too. Doesn't fix, but like, you know, you can't have it all. So
it can get your fixing though, so that's cool.
It can't get your fixing though, because it costs green and it only gets forest.
Well, but I was just making reference
to the lesson itself. Yeah.
That's
I've stooped to that before for sure.
That'll get you to your bookworm. You know,
there you go.
That card looks nice if you can get to 8 mana and use it.
That card is brutal. I consistently, like, I can't remember a game in which my opponent resolved it and that I won. So yeah, that card's great. Also, any of the rare learn cards, like the Quill, right? The what is it, Professor's Quill or something?
Poet's Quill. Had some good times with that recently. She's shaking her head. She did not
have good times with that. He drew it every game.
Oh no!
Literal every game.
That card is a beating, man.
So good.
And the gnarly Professor. That card is really gnarly and limited, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that thing is worth its weight in gold and a little bit more, and then you get an added piece of cardboard just for free. The only lesson we didn't talk about is the crazy mythic one that gives you all of the bodies. Definitely draft that, guys.
Oh yeah, I think that might be like one of the highest picks in the set. Right?
Mascot Exhibition.
I opened that my first sealed pool and it was nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like the companion thing, y'all. It's like, how good does a card need to be if you can just yoink it? And okay, you can't just get it anytime you want, but if you're building any amount of learn into your deck, you can reasonably expect to get it every game. And just, I mean, think about how good that is, right? It's the reason why people might actually debate whether to first pick a card like that instead of like another just obvious bomb like a Professor Onyx, right? Because clearly, if Onyx was the lesson, then you'd probably nab that one every time. But just the consistency of it means that it might actually be correct to pick the Mascot Exhibition over an Onyx Pack 1, pick 1.
Mm-hmm. So we've been talking about the lessons a bit. I wanted to ask you guys a question, and this kind of it does use the lessons in a direction, but one of the big questions I had figuring out my decks was looking at Magecraft and wanting to make sure that I could trigger Magecraft pretty often on my cards. And the lessons do help with that. There's also a lot of spells that are also creatures, and I found myself wanting to stray very often away from like the 15 creatures that we normally want to run because I wanted Magecraft more often, and I never seemed to have a lack of spells to choose from because there were so many in the set. Does that affect, is that different in Strixhaven versus like other sets, or would you guys play more spells, less spells? I'm sure it depends on the deck, but any general pointers on that?
What do you think, NerdGirl?
So I think this set is very, very conducive to very low creature decks, not only because of the Magecraft, where you're getting really good, powerful triggers, oftentimes that are, you know, worth not having a body. They might draw you into more creatures, making, you know, having less creatures fine. Also, a lot of the spells just are creatures. I would just include those in my creature count. Every single learn spell becomes a creature when you have like the elemental summoning in the sideboard. So, I mean, I would count all of those as creatures. So it would not be surprising to me if you go into a lot of drafts with like 8 or sometimes even less creatures.
Wow. Yeah, that's very different.
Assuming that you have, you know, those creature lessons or something to back it up. There is a little bit of recursion, but not a ton. Those always kind of count as partial creatures for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there are even just like main deck cards which also give you creatures like the Prismari 7-drop that makes 2 4/4 elementals. That card's a beating.
Yeah, that definitely counts as a creature.
Yeah, like that I frequently have games where I'm doing just fine, I'm keeping up, I'm interacting, and then my opponent resolves one of those and I'm just like I can't keep up anymore. You know, you just added 2 4/4s to the board. So, you know, and those are only uncommon, right? So you see those fairly often. So yeah, there's a decent amount of that going around. And I agree, like I take those cards pretty highly because of that. I definitely do want to note that in general, this feels like a bit more of a grindy format. It's not that there can't be good aggressive decks. I think I got to 6 wins. I couldn't clinch it, but I got to 6 wins with like a Mardu based hyper aggressive deck that was just like, you know, like 40% combat tricks, 60%, you know, Magecraft aggressive creatures. So you can definitely do that in this format, but I think that the majority of games are going to come down a little bit more to who drew more of their learn cards, who had better lessons in the sideboard, who came teched to really like maximize their mana and maximize their card advantage at every point in the game.
Who draws all of their rares every game?
Hey, it's for the podcast crowd. I'm getting an elbow slammed into my shoulder.
You know, better lucky than good, right? Anyway, so I think that's something that you should really be thinking about in this set is even if you are playing an aggressive deck, just be thinking about how am I getting advantage? And oftentimes that's like a good learn combat trick that pulls a creature out of the board. That's an excellent way to get some card advantage. Graveyard recursion stuff like Lorehold Excavation, really good way to just ensure that your cards are still working for you in the mid to late game, even after they've died. I can't tell you how many times I have domed my opponent for lethal with the Lorehold Excavation. Like sometimes that card just doing 3 or 4 damage over the course of the late game is just enough to get you there. So I'm a huge fan of that card in particular. Cool. All right. Are there any other top level thoughts that either of you have on this particular format?
I think you're going to have to revisit with me in like 2 weeks. I don't think I've played enough to have any like true deep insight. Like I said, we did 3 sealeds. Mm-hmm. I think I did 2 drafts and 2 sealeds before we got here. So pretty minimal.
But to be real, like just listening to you guys talk and being here in this conversation, I want to go back and rebuild all the pools I did already. Like I already think I could rebuild a few things better just from kind of talking about like the spell count, especially. Like I think I felt tethered to having a ton of creatures because that's what you always want to do. And I would probably pay a lot more attention to all the ways to use the lessons. You did something cool. You had multicolor lands in your deck so that you could cast off-color lessons sometimes.
Yeah, so CGB was freaking out. He was like, what are you splashing? Like, why are you playing this? Like, comes into play tapped and steals another land.
Freaking out, I was thinking about it.
Pretty terrible. And he's like, what kind of splash card are you going to find? But I had like 2 off-color lessons that, probably wouldn't. I had the blue rare one that lets you draw cards if your opponent has more cards, and that's only 1 blue. So it gave me the option to get those if they ever suited my needs. So look out for things like that. But yeah, I mean, I would definitely consider running that, especially if you have treasure tokens. Keep all of your lessons, even your off-color ones, handy.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. So glad we got to bring that up.
Yeah. There are just a few cards I want to point out, which I think are like real pillars of the format and cards that you should just pick really highly. So the first one is it Frost Trickster? CGB's
promo card. Yeah.
Good card.
That's like one of the best commons I've ever
back
seen
in my ear
in draft. I can't see what's going on, but I assume it's amusing.
He made flexi arms and ripped the headphones out of my ears.
There you go. Well,
the cost of my content.
You should feel proud, man. That card is a house. I strongly correlate losing the game with my opponent resolving multiple copies of that card. I
mean, I ran multiple copies of Frostlinks. This one just flies. It's nutso. It's so good. I would run 3 or 4.
Amazing. Yeah, I would honestly, if someone gave me the option to run a deck in this format that was 17 lands and 23 of those, I would take it in a heartbeat.
That you would win the race for sure.
I think so. Yeah.
Tag me in that screenshot.
There you go. So that card is a house. Environmental sciences, like I said, that card is very, very important, I think, for playing all of the stuff that you want in the format. The learn cards, just take them more highly than you might think. But both sides, really, the learn and the lesson cards, they're worth it. Basically, they're worth the picks. So don't have that fear of like, oh, I don't know, man. Like I need cards in my main deck. Like cards are playable in Magic these days. Even the kind of crummy lesson or learn cards are like, yes, they're probably fine. You can throw them in your deck. It's not going to be a disaster.
There's so much less chaff than there used to be. Like, 4 to 5 years ago, like almost everything is playable.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Cards that have really impressed me in Witherbloom are the black-green combat trick that gives your creature death touch, and like that card does everything, man. Like your creature survives combat, you gain life, your creature gets death touch.
I have not played it, but I have been wrecked by it once or twice.
Yeah, I learned real quick about multiple blocking against Witherbloom decks. Like that card is a wrecking for sure. So keep an eye out for that. I also fairly like the lifelink trample crocodile in Witherbloom. It's a 3/3 for 4. I think that card is pound for pound an overperformer in the format. It's another common, I think.
It synergizes so well. It does everything Witherbloom wants it to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and then again, like in Prismari, really look out for those uncommon 7-drop spells. They're just really fantastic. They usually, 7-drops often do kind of slam the door shut when you get a chance to cast them, and I definitely think that's true in this case. And then Lorehold Excavation, that's kind of been a pet card of mine, but again, just a consistent overperformer for me. I also really like that white combat trick that it's a 2-speed, it's a 1 and a white instant, and it gives a creature +1/+1 and vigilance, but you get to storm with it. So if you've cast another spell in the turn,
show of confidence.
Heck yeah, that card is sick.
I have not played with or without it.
Yeah, it's and it plays really well with it's the 2-drop Magecraft creature 1 and a white 2/2 that gets +1/+1.
Leonin Light Scribe.
No, it's the common version.
Oh, I don't know that. It's a common.
It's eager. I think it's called like Eager First Year or something like that.
Eager, yep, that's it.
So those two are a house in combination. Like that creature gets so large in combat if you have a couple combat tricks to cast with that creature going. With that, yeah. So that creature, that spell, and like another spell, like maybe a 1 or 2-drop other, combat trick. Those just go so well together. So anyway, those are some of my initial thoughts on like some of the more common cards that you're going to see in the format that I think have really impressed me so far.
So Arjuna, what college are you?
Oh man, I'm Quandrix all the way.
Oh my lord, it's rigged. We both got Quandrix.
We took the quiz. We both got Quandrix. Yeah.
Oh really?
It is now a Quandrix cast.
Dude, I was always a filthy Simic mage. I was a filthy Simic mage before Simic was good. So I don't know, man. I just can't resist like anything that puts extra lands onto the battlefield and mopes about. That's another sick card, by the way. The turtle. The turtle is so good.
Quandrix Cultivator.
I just like your accent when you say turtle.
There you go.
We gotta like somehow maneuver him into turtle every single cast now.
All right. I'm just gonna be like, what was the best card in Quandrix for me again?
What is your favorite 3/4 for 4 creature in Quandrix? And he's gonna say
the turtle cast with CGB and Arjuna. Yes.
Awesome.
Yep. Okay, well, I think that's going to wrap things up here. CGB, do you want to take us on home?
I'm going to do my absolute best. Of course, I follow in the footsteps of the great Arjuna Perkins, who is a wonderful host, but I will try to fill in. So thank you very much for listening to or watching the ArenaCraft podcast. You can find us in all kinds of podcast locations like Covert Go Blues YouTube channel for the video version. Thank you to Bottlebrush for the sick edits over there. You can find us audio version on Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And if you want an even more in-depth list, go to our site, ArenaCraftPodcast.com. You can also join our Discord. If you're on YouTube, hit the link below or check the show notes and find a lot of cool people talking about a lot of cool Magic stuff. A lot of podcast fans. Arjuna is very active in there. It's a sweet Discord. It's a great community of what we call the crafties. So, MTGNerdGirl, thank you for being our guest star today. Let people know where they can find you quickly, please.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. So you guys can find me on Twitch and YouTube and I guess Twitter under MTGNerdGirl. No spaces, exactly how you would think it would be spelled.
And Arjuna, any final words for the fans?
Just go out there, crush some limited, and do the crafties proud. Arjuna out.
We will see you next week. Later, crafties.